Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another series of our Bright Talks with Sun Life Asset Management. My name is Angel Cruz of Slamsy's Banks and Alternative Channel, and I will be your host this afternoon. So, this afternoon, we will be having the second episode of our Fund and Focus series for this year. But before we begin, allow me to introduce our company first. No, so Sun Life Asset Management Company, or SLAMC, is a wholly owned subsidiary of Sun Life of Canada in the Philippines. So, as the investment arm of Sun Life in the Philippines, we are committed to be every Filipino's partner in their pursuit of prosperity. So, SLAMC has been advocating for financial prosperity since the year 2000. So, we actually celebrated our 20th anniversary last year. And being the largest non bank asset management company, we manage a total of 16 mutual funds, collectively called the Prosperity Funds, with over 160 billion assets under management. And the Sun Life Prosperity Funds are available through our 2,500 mutual fund advisors. We also have 10 bank partners, 8 broker partners, and also a direct online channel. So the next slide will be showing the Peso Funds that we have. So as you can see, we complete the risk spectrum, no, from the most aggressive, from the most conservative to the most aggressive fund. So for conservative, we have the Prosperity Starter Fund. For moderate, we have the GS Fund, or the Government Securities Fund, and the Bond Fund. For balanced fund, we have balanced and the achiever funds. And for the aggressive funds, we have the Philippine Stock Indexed Fund and Philippine Equity Fund. And the same goes with in the dollar space. We also have a complete suite of products from conservative up to aggressive funds. We have the dollar starter for conservative, dollar abundance for moderate, dollar wellspring for balanced, dollar advantage for growth, and dollar or world voyager fund for the aggressive fund. But for this afternoon, we will focus, or we will go back to basics and share with you the features of our most conservative funds, the Peso Starter Fund and the Dollar Starter Funds. And to help us differentiate these two funds, we invited our Business Development Officer, John Natividad, who will help us understand the features of these funds. So let me now call on John. Hi, John. Good afternoon.
Hi, Angel. Good afternoon.
Hi, John. So we're here today to discuss SLAMS's starter funds. No, but
Yes.
before we go on into the details of these funds, maybe you can help us understand what are these funds and how do these funds fit in everyone's portfolio?
Sure. I'd be happy to help. Right. So, but before we actually get into the starter funds, I hope that we can take a step back first and talk about cash. So this is something that is very basic. We all know this, no. In fact, it's very easy for us to take this for granted because it's something that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. The term cash itself is used rather loosely, no. So sometimes it refers to the cold hard cash that is in our wallet. Sometimes it's the money that is in our savings or time deposit accounts, no. So if I'm sure we're all familiar with the board game Monopoly. Before you're able to buy the apartments or the businesses there and grow your fortune, which is the objective of the game, you would first need money, right? So we're actually pretty lucky in Monopoly because when we start, we are given money. We are given money to as a Kickstarter to start off the game, because otherwise it'll be, I think, a very slow burn and boring game, no. And to me personally, when I think about that, what is that game? What is that Monopoly game without the starter money? I think I just call it life. Diba? So unless you receive a hefty inheritance, most of us would have to either work our 9 to 5 jobs or grow our own businesses so that eventually, like in the game of Monopoly, we're able to achieve our goals, diba? And those goals are different for each and every person or individual. So yeah, so but usually not all of the goals would have a monetary aspect or a monetary value assigned to it. So for going back to cash, no, again, we know that cash is very important. It's one of the most basic things that is needed to live on our day-to-day lives, no, from buying groceries. Most times we try to also save up cash. And try to save up a bit more cash so that we can afford smaller luxuries, let's say buying gadgets or traveling before the pandemic started, right? Or also even small appliances at home, diba? Or even just going on dinner dates with our partners, right? So, however, with the pandemic, we also have realized that having cash on hand, especially what we call the emergency fund, is very important. Most importantly, I think for me, is aside from these basic day-to-day needs that the cash is able to provide us with, having cash allows us to achieve our goals, no, our life goals, as we call it, whether it's getting married, setting up a college education fund for our babies, or sending them to schools, diba? So whatever it might be, again, usually it would have a monetary value attached to it. That's why it's very important to know the value of cash, and also the value of managing it.
Yeah, I agree with you, John. No, I think cash is really very important, especially in times like this. And I'm sure no, our most of our or most, if not all of our attendees today would also have cash in their pockets. No, but I also believe, John, no, that there is a smart way to manage cash.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
so John, to be smart about it, where do you advise we put our cash, and what are the key things we should look at?
Okay. Before actually, well, of course, the title of the webinar is starter funds, right? But before we actually get into that, let's take a step back and remove the starter fund topic from our headspace first, no. Let's take a look at what's critical. What are the things that we have to look at when we are looking for an instrument where we want to place our cash, no, or put in our cash. Number one is liquidity. Liquidity in finance, no, it's the quality of cash that makes it enables it to be accessed quickly. Okay, so meaning if you need cash, especially from the sorry, the uses that we discussed earlier in the other slide, you need to have easy access to it, no. So hindi pwede na if you would be buying groceries, it would take you 1 week, diba, a few business days for you to be able to get your money. That's why ATMs are very convenient, no, and especially these days yung mga QR codes na lang which are connected to our online wallets. Those are the things that make our cash very liquid, no. So we even have this what we call cash poor millionaires, no. I'm sure once in a while we hear about these in the news na there is a millionaire that is not able to pay their dues, diba, to whatever it is, maybe tax or yeah, whatever it might be, not because they don't have the net worth to pay for it, but because they don't have cash. Right? So it maybe they own mansions worth of millions of and millions of pesos or dollars, but they're not able to liquidate it. They're not able to sell it because not every day will you find someone who will be ready to buy that asset, and you will be able to again liquidate your money, no? So liquidity is important when looking into parking or putting your savings, no. So land, jewelry, those might not be the best places to look at. Number two, quality, again, that should be looked at when looking for considering an instrument is how volatile is it, diba? So you don't want to put your money in assets where the value goes up and down tremendously over the short term. No? So what we have here in the graph, in the slide, is the graph of the Philippine Stock Exchange Index. Now, this is from year 2000 to year 2000 2021. So that's a very long time. And if you would look at it, it would seem like it's very interesting, or it's very attractive, I would say, to some, because over the long term it goes up, right? However, you would see here key time frames, key schedules, where the graph is actually going down. So imagine, let's say, what if you put in money in 2008, diba? In the global financial crisis time, or more recently, just before the pandemic, diba? What if you say you were planning to have a wedding in 2020 or either 2021, and in 2019 you put in your wedding fund in in a volatile, let's say in the stock exchange index, right? Then most likely it'll be a very, you'll find it, you'll have a very difficult time, because your money would have depreciated greatly, no? So while of course for long-term goals index funds are better, but for more immediate day-to-day goals, this might not be the best, no? So for your groceries, probably don't put your cash in the index fund, no? So those two things we inherently know, diba? We don't want volatility, and we want liquidity. We inherently know that, and I discussed this, and this is the reason why most of us actually just store our money in the banks, because in the bank, actually, it's very accessible. You have
Mhm.
ATMs all around now. It's fund transfer, online fund transfer is very easy to do. And number two, in the bank, your money is actually guaranteed, right? There is a very small interest rate guaranteed for your deposit. So in terms of volatility, then it's not very volatile. However, I would like to actually challenge that for today. No, the third aspect that most of us should also be still looking at is, even though we want to be maintaining a high liquidity and safety. We want our funds to be in a safe in a safe instrument, and we also don't want it to be diba, fluctuating in terms of value. We still don't have to discount, or we still don't have to sacrifice the better potential returns that could still be gotten, right, from those savings, no? So remember, these are the funds that we worked so hard for, no? So hopefully we're able to maximize the value that we get out of it. So in here, in the slide that I'm showing right now, we have here the common, or the average, you would say, interest rates of savings accounts, time deposits, and then for comparison, we have here the Peso Starter Fund, no? So let's, for example, you have a 1 million placement. So this could either be for maybe, yeah, any goal that you want, an emergency fund, a wedding, diba? Whatever it may be. So for illustration purposes only, where we're using as 1 year return of the Peso Starter Fund, no? So around September 24, 2021, um for the savings account, using the 0.12 5% average market interest rate that we have right now, for 1 year you would be earning from your 1 million peso 1,000 pesos actually net. In reality, well, the way it's quoted is actually 1,250, right? But if you would remember, that's still gross, because we still have to pay the 20% withholding tax, and taking that out will net us 1,000 pesos. If you would want to put it in a time deposit, on the other hand, with a rate of 0.25%, the return would again also net you 2,000 pesos. However, if we use the indicated return for the Peso Starter Fund, this will give us 15,000 pesos. So I think that's like quite a stark difference, right? In terms of return, no? So and in considering that it's still a very conservative fund, I think it's a very good it's a very attractive proposal, right? So just because we plan to use the fund, diba? Hopefully the funds that you are using here are those that we plan to use within a year or so for our short-term goals. So just because you plan to use it within the year doesn't mean that you would again have to sacrifice the return, right? So um that's an extra money that could also sorry, that's an extra money to also help offset inflation. I'm sure most of us, especially lately, has been more has felt the
Mm.
inflation more strongly, right? So we've seen prices go up in recent years. So having said this, I think I can now discuss the Sun Life Starter Fund, no? And I can also share how it is able to give better returns while also maintaining a very safe and conservative fund to invest in.
Okay, so thank you for that, John. I think this table, this comparison table, is a very good table to show our listeners this afternoon. No? So good thing that you also mentioned that the rates that we get from banks are still subject to withholding tax, whereas the rate of return that the Peso Starter Fund has provided its investors are already net. No, net. It's not
Yeah,
even subject to any withholding tax, and seeing the 1.5% return and comparing it to the rates that banks offer us, it's a really good alternative, no, to consider when when managing our liquid assets. And probably, John, you can also explain to us what the Peso Starter Fund is, and how is it being managed and be able to give better returns over the standard savings accounts.
sure. Would be happy to help with that. No, so that's also a very good question to have. In fact, we encourage all our investors to be asking that question. Again, these are all our hard-earned money. No, so we want to know as much as possible, and not just for Sun Life, for everything where you put in your money. It always helps to do your due diligence and ask how is the value being generated. No, so this is a snippet from the fun fact sheet that we have for the Sun Life Peso Starter Fund. This is also downloadable from our website. Or there's a short link that we have here. It's bit.ly/slamcy peso starter. So the fun fact sheet is a short summary of what the fund is about, and also what its objectives are, and also the investors that might be suited for it. No, so for the Sun Life Prosperity Funds, again, for the Sun Life Peso Starter Fund, its objective is to provide potential higher annual returns than the standard savings account, and it's ideal for investors with a short-term investment horizon and a very conservative risk profile. We can also see here where it puts the money in the fund. No? So where the money it pulls from investors, where is it placed? So we can see here actually most of this are placed in treasury bonds, treasury bills, and short-term placements. And then on the right here, we can also see the percentage it covers in terms of investment mix. So we have it here in government bonds, corporate bonds, short-term placement, money market placement, and so on. No? So you may be asking, what are these instruments? No, they sound very Greek to me. So I hope that we could help you understand what it is this afternoon. No? So if you invest in the Sun Life Starter Funds, where does your money go, and how is it able to earn better than the standard savings account? So number one, it is again invested in bonds. So bonds are essentially loans, or in Filipino, utang. So it is one of the ways wherein a government or corporation is able to raise capital for their projects. So these are considered safer instruments over equities because, unlike stock, which only shares in the profits or even losses of a business, bonds are guaranteed to be paid back, no, regardless of how the business is doing. So, for example, we have a corporation that needs money to open a restaurant. No, so there are two ways in which we can partner with them. Number one is we can extend a loan to them, or we can partner with them through pakikisosyo in Tagalog, no. So if we hand them a loan, regardless of how the restaurant operates, they will have to be paying us the loan and in the interest that we set, no. However, if we partnered with them, if we had if nakisosyo tayo with them, we will be raking in the money if the restaurant is doing well, but also in the back 180 of that is you would also be incurring losses if the restaurant doesn't do so well, no. So um it would, yeah, so this is the reason why bonds are considered as more safer instruments over shares or stocks, no. So number two reason why the peso starter fund is a good liquid instrument and also provides more returns than the bank is it invests in short-term deposits or short-term debts such as treasury bills, commercial papers, among other instruments. So most of these investments mature in less than 1 year. So they can even mature in durations of less than 60 days. So this means that investments are frequently maturing and being replaced to limit exposure to losses. So while these investments are maturing and being replaced, they pay a small interest as well. And offer investors ample liquidity. So earlier we discussed that cash is for the regular person, diba? What it is. In the investing world, cash describes an entire asset class also. So cash in investing typically refers to funds held in money market accounts, which are relatively low risk investments that pay a small amount of interest. So money markets are highly liquid, meaning investment managers like Sun Life are able to access the funds easily. So in turn, this is also how the Sun Life starter funds are able to provide liquidity to its investors, because the funds that the instruments that they invest in are liquid. So those who are investing in it can also gain the funds, gain access to their funds back very easily. And there are other ways actually that Sun Life provides liquidity for its investors, no, through the convenience of our mobile app and web portal. You can easily file a redemption there, and the money will be credited to your bank account. I think for maximum of 2 business days na lang, no.
Mhm.
So keep in mind that these investments are still exposed to risk, similar to other debt investments such as interest rates. I'll give the final two reasons why the starter fund is able to again earn better than the standard savings account. No? So number one, if you take a look at bank interest rates, you will notice that the bigger placement you put, let's say the interest rate for money for someone depositing 1 million pesos is different from someone depositing 100 million pesos.
Mhm.
So the bigger that you put, the bigger money that you put in, the better, the more preferred rates that you get out of the bank, no? Since the fund manager pulls money from different investors, its fund size is very big, no? In fact, the Sun Life Peso Starter Fund is at least 105 billion pesos, no? So meaning our fund managers are able to request for preferential rates, better rates, which in turn it shares to its investors. Number two, you are asking, no, where the money is placed. Have you also asked, diba, if you put in money in your bank account, have you asked yourself, saan ba nilalagay ng bangko ko yung pera? Do you think it just sits in a vault somewhere? Actually it doesn't, no. So no, they also invested in instruments, in fact, such as these, no. They have very smart people who manage their fund and invest it, and in turn they guarantee just a small return to their depositors. Mutual funds is actually the inverse of that, no. So opposite to that, mutual fund managers would just charge a management fee, and every the rest of the return are shared back to the investors, no. So this is actually again how the funds are able to provide higher returns, and also again liquidity and safety to its investors. No? And I think just to go back to the Peso Starter Fund, um again, this is again great for short-term investments, those who are looking for safety in their money. And uh, another reason why we call this the Peso Starter Fund is because it's very easy to start opening an account to this fund. It's just actually it's been lowered to just 100 pesos now. So it's like, if you are not yet very familiar with mutual funds, anyone can try and get into get into the feeling of how to invest in funds and not risk any, I mean, substantial amount of money. No, just for only 100 pesos, you can even take a look at the digital platforms that we have for our clients and get a feel of what it is like investing in mutual funds. So very similarly, this is just the snippet from the Dollar Starter Fund. We can see here it holds a very similar holding of instruments. No, so we have the money market placement, corporate bonds, short-term placements, treasury bonds, no, and the like. And we also have here, for illustration purposes, the potential return that you could get out of the Dollar Starter Fund. And also compared against the savings and time deposit rates for USD deposits. No, so I'm actually very familiar with this because my dad was an OFW for the longest time, and my mom would put most of our savings in time deposit. So had we known that there is a product such as the Dollar Starter Fund, then I would have recommended, if I was old enough then, that they could have considered the Dollar Starter Fund. No? Take note, the withholding tax for USD bank accounts is 15% instead of 20% in the peso accounts.
Okay,
So
John.
that's it.
Yeah, thank you for that, John. No? And again, this slide, I think this is a very powerful slide for all our listeners, just to see the net return, no, of the fund, comparing it to the regular savings and time deposit account or time deposit rates that we can get from banks, especially right now. No, I think if you look into the time deposit rates for dollar deposits, I think this 0.10%, John, is even higher. I think some of the banks right now are offering near 0%, no, for their dollar time deposits.
Mm-mm.
And again, the holding period for this um time deposits are much longer than the dollar starter fund, which is, as you've mentioned, 7 days holding period lang. No?
Mm-mm.
Sige, probably I just want to throw this question again, John, for all our listeners, because you've mentioned that for the money market, you can open an account for as low as 100 pesos, right? How about for the dollar starter fund? How much is the minimum
Mm.
um, investment amount to start opening an account for the dollar starter?
So for the Dollar Starter Fund, it's actually also lower as compared to our other dollar funds. Most of
Mhm.
our dollar funds have a minimum initial investment of 1,000 USD. But for the Dollar Starter Fund, it's 500 USD. So that is the minimum initial investment for the Dollar Starter Fund.
Okay, so that's good. So just for $500, John, no, they can already open a dollar
Correct.
starter account. So probably some of our attendees here, they have excess dollars, or probably dollars that they wanted to use for travel, but unfortunately we are in pandemic.
Correct.
So probably you still have some dollars in your wallets, no, and I'm sure $500 is not as big, no, for our listeners this afternoon. So okay, John. So it seems like the peso and the dollar starter funds are very similar. No, as
Mm,
you've mentioned,
correct.
they are both conservative. They are both liquid. Their underlying investments are very how do you call it? Conservative. No, not
Correct.
taking too much risk. No,
Mm-mm.
but are there any difference between these two funds, John?
Okay. So for me, essentially, the funds are the same. But I am required to say that there's a technical difference to the two funds, no. So funds are classified in different ways, no. And the Peso Starter Fund is technically classified as a money market fund. We have here a question actually asking if the Peso Starter Fund is the same as the money market fund. Um, yes, yes, it was actually recently renamed just this September. This was originally called the Sun Life Money Market Fund, but it was renamed to the Sun Life Peso Starter Fund just very recently. But it's still essentially the same fund, and it's still the a money market classified fund. The Dollar Starter Fund, however, is again also technically classified as a short-term bond fund. So, what is the difference of this? So, remember earlier we discussed that these funds, in order to be able to maintain high liquidity, they invest in instruments that are maturing within a year, no, an average of a year or even 60 days or less than. So that's the reason why they're able to get high liquidity. So for the Peso Starter Fund, if you average all of the durations, we call that duration, or the maturity dates of the assets that it invests in, that would be less than 1 year. For the Dollar Starter Fund, it's more than 1 year. No, it could be more than 1 year. I think the last time that we heard it, it was actually also less than a year, but it could be more than 1 year. This is again just a technical assignment to the fund, just to allow it more flexibility, because it's I think it's harder to find instruments which are USD denominated that could give better returns, no. So as we've seen also earlier, USD deposits would have usually lesser interest rates because they are in more developed markets. So just to give our fund managers more flexibility in terms of managing the fund and providing us better value, then it's classified as a short-term bond fund. But again, these are all very highly technical, regulatory even requirements. But I think for the standard or the average investor, substantially it's the same. No, if you are looking for a safe place to put in, let's say, your emergency fund or a fund that you are planning to use within the year or so, both the Peso Starter Fund and the Dollar Starter Fund are very good instruments to look at.
Okay, so thank you for sharing those points, John. So at this point, we now understand what starter funds are, their
Mm.
key features, and how these funds perform. We also take note of what you've mentioned a while ago, that there is a really smart way in managing our cash. So now, if one of our listener is interested to put their hard-earned cash in our dollar or in our starter funds, are there any personal considerations they should look at?
Yes, of course. There are we encourage our listeners, or even our clients, to consider things before they actually rush in investing or putting their money. No, number one, we've been we've been stressing this for during the entire session. Number one is investment horizon. So this is the total length that you are expecting to be holding your funds. No, so how much time do you have? So if is it 1 month, is it 1 week, when do you need the fund? Siguro if it's 1 week, just put it in your wallet, di ba? Or if it's 1 month, maybe consider just putting it in your bank account. But if let's say 6 months, within 6 months, or within the year, or even we can even push it to up to 2 years, di ba? You could consider, if you would know that you will be spending it within 2 years, you could highly consider either the Peso Starter or the Dollar Starter Fund. Let's say if it's for your retirement and you are a fresh graduate, diba? It's for your retirement. Should you be considering the Peso Starter Fund? No. For me, my answer is no, no. If it's the I mean you've already ticked off all the other requirements in investing. You already have an emergency fund, everything is already there. But for your retirement, it's really for long term. No, we don't recommend the peso starter or the dollar starter fund, because again, the main objective of this fund is to preserve your capital and beat bank interest rates. If you put in your retirement fund and you have, let's say, 40 years or even just 30, 20 years of time frame or investment horizon, you would effectively be losing out in the potential returns that you could be getting had you put it somewhere, had you put it in an instrument that is, let's say, more geared towards long-term investing. So earlier, we've also shown you the 20-year graph of the Philippine Stock Exchange Fund. So maybe that's something that our listeners could also consider if it's for a very long term very long term endeavor, no. So for me, actually, that's the main concern for investing in the money market fund. Of course, we also have the risk appetite. Hopefully you have a conservative risk profile, but I would say this is actually of a less of a consideration, because even if you are you're younger, you have a more aggressive risk appetite. I think there's everyone needs liquidity in their portfolio. No? There's a place for liquidity in everyone's portfolio. Even our funds have their own liquidity placements. No, so it doesn't really matter if you have a higher risk profile. If you don't have liquidity, then you could always still consider these funds, the peso starter fund. And number three, this is also a consideration, financial situation. Um, but we usually advise our clients na this, if they're considering investing in more aggressive funds, na let's say a balanced fund or an index fund, an equity fund, we usually advise our clients to please build up your emergency fund first, no. And for the peso starter fund, if you it's perfect, no, if you don't have a peso, if you don't have an emergency fund yet, this is the perfect instrument where you could put your starter fund. Sorry, you could put your emergency fund. That's why it's actually called the starter fund, because if you haven't really started yet, then this is where you should be starting.
Okay, so again, no, just to reiterate what John has mentioned, the considerations that you have to take when investing in the starter funds would be investment horizon, risk appetite, and financial situation. And again, I just want to reiterate what John has mentioned. Of course, we don't want our clients, our listeners, or even ourselves to be over liquid, no, and miss out on better investment opportunities. Of course, we want to match our short-term goals with short-term investment placement, and for long-term goals with um, our long-term investments. No, so aside from this, John, are
Mm-mm.
this are there any other factors, perhaps in the market, that could tell us when is it a good time to invest in these starter funds?
Mm-mm. I mentioned earlier that of course these instruments are still subject to interest rates changes, no. So perhaps some of our listeners are asking, when is it best to invest in the Sun Life starter funds? Number one, I would say it's always a good time to build your emergency fund, no? If you don't have this yet, we can't stress it enough. I think the pandemic can't stress it enough. If you don't have that yet, please even incrementally build one. And for that, you could please consider the Sun Life Starter Fund. I hope we've shown this afternoon that it is a good instrument to be considering. So unlike equity funds that can go up and down, timing the market for the Sun Life Starter funds are not as useful, I would say, since the fund does not really fluctuate in terms of value. So the goal of the fund is to really work on a stable line. And the fund would rather, I mean, our fund managers would rather it not move as opposed to have it as a loss. So that is really the objective, no. So the goal really is for the fund to provide stable income return. that's our goal, no? And if that can't be helped, then at least just don't lose money from for our investors. So going back to interest rates, no, so we know that regular bank savings rates, uh what they are, we've also shown it earlier. And for the longest time they actually have not gone up, no. They used to be very high a very long time ago, but it's since gone down now, no. And in fact, the BSP and the Philippine Monetary Board are keen on keeping the rates low, especially in consideration of the pandemic that we are all experiencing now. No? So if ever the BSP changes the interest rates, diba, make it go higher, regular bank depositors won't actually feel that. No? So the ones who will be able to feel that directly are the preferred, perhaps the institutional investors or the high net worth depositors. But standard average Filipinos like us, perhaps will not be able to maximize that, no. In fact, if you would want to maximize that opportunity, if that happens, no, is to consider again the peso starter fund, because if you put your money then there, then effectively your money would be part of the institutional investment pool of Sun Life. And again, our fund managers would be able to use that to haggle for better returns, no, or sorry, to negotiate, not haggle, for better returns. And of course, when we get that better returns, that is given back again to the investors.
Okay, so simply to answer the question that were flashing on everyone's screen, when is the best time to invest in the Sun Life Starter Funds? I guess John made it clear, and the
Yeah.
best time is now. No?
Now,
Yeah,
anytime.
anytime. But the best time would be now. No? Okay, so I hope that our listeners are now more informed and will actually consider this starter funds, no, as they start their investing journey. John, do you have any other tips?
Okay. I would just like to share some personal tips that I've also learned, no, throughout the years, and also some of the things that we actually really encourage here at Sun Life, no. So number one, don't take out loans for short-term goals, no. Siguro for more longer term goals, let's say uh, purchasing a house, then taking out a mortgage would make more sense, no. But let's say you just want a new laptop or a new iPhone, the latest iPhone, but your phone is still working. I mean, wanting the new phone is okay. I mean, that's okay, no, if that's how you want to spend your money. But hopefully you don't spend money that you haven't earned yet. Instead of taking out a loan to purchase that laptop, we encourage you to save for that instead, diba? um so make goal-based investments, diba? And if you say you want to buy the new phone within, let's say, 6 months or 3 months, then you could consider the Peso Starter Fund for that, no. Psychology is a big thing in finance. In fact, there's a whole chapter of it, diba? Psychology and finance. And the power of goal-based investing really cannot be discounted, no. And also us making sure that you have an investment, you name your investments, no? So I have here shown an example, no. So this is an example portfolio of an investor. We can see here he has four funds, even, no. He has four peso starter funds, and it is labeled differently, no. So number one talaga, of course, emergency fund, no. So nakalabel yun, siguro naka-hide lang yung value tsaka yung account number, but it's the emergency fund. Ito number two, peso post-pandemic travel, di ba? So siguro na udlot ng travel. So for the next pandemic na lang, ay pagkatapos na ng pandemic, hinahanda niya na para kasado na siya after the pandemic. Meron siyang third na next business idea. So ayan, siguro kung may business siya, baka he's trying to save up for the next business, and he wants it to, let's say, make it happen within 1 year or 2 years. Then sinesave up niya na dito, no. Tapos number four, meron siyang new laptop. So gusto niya rin ng new laptop, so nagsisave siya. So na yun, naka goal based yung investments niya, no. And then you would see here below, meron siyang retirement fund, pero it's not placed in the starter fund. It's actually in the stock index fund. And then separately, meron pa siyang retirement travel. Ayan, gusto niyo pa yung travel and retirement, iniba niya pa. So I think the power of this is, if you are putting money here, kasi 'di ba, if you just have one bank account, let's say your payroll account, and all your money is there, halo-halo siya. Even if you have a lot of goals, sometimes, number one, it's very easy to access, di ba? Pag nag 11-11, 10-10, 9-9, ang daling mag-swipe na lang ng card now, no? So, if you set it aside, di ba, there's also that concept of set it and forget it, di ba? Or out of sight, out of mind. So, hindi mo rin siya na masyadong na iisip, hindi ka rin masyadong natatempt na, okay, I have that money that I can actually spend. Number two, if let's say you remember it, diba? Kasi it's money, and you remember it, you would have that hesitation na, let's say, just want to have a new gadget, but you are saving this for your kids' educational fund, then you would have that think twice, diba, na should I get money from my kids' education fund to buy a new phone? Probably not, no. So this is the beauty of goal-based investing, no, because we're able to more quickly assess our goals, diba? And also manage our investments more carefully and more prudently. Siguro as my last tip na lang, just to go back to the most basic, no, para pinaka basic na lang, if you need the money for the month, just maintain it in your wallet or your bank account. Kasi if you need it for groceries, probably too much naman na to try and maximize pa the returns from that. No? So you will need it within the month naman. But if you will need it pa within a year pa, 1 year pa, 1 year is quite a long time pa naman, diba? Mahaba pa naman yung 1 year. Consider the Sun Life Starter Funds pa. So actually, even pushing 2 years, pushing siguro 2.5 years, consider pa the Peso Starter Fund. But if you would need it, let's say 5 years na, 10 years na, for your retirement na, then maybe there are other funds that we could look into. And that is also the reason why we are holding this fun in focus session, so that our clients and our diba, those who are interested in funds are able to learn more which ones would be best suited for their goals.
Okay, so thank you, John, for for those last two slides. No, I think that really encourages, or those slides encourage our listeners, no, to make a goal-based investments, and to start investing now, and to set aside some of their cash for their immediate needs. Okay, so now that we heard from John what starter funds are, we actually prepared 3 learning check questions, no, just to see if our listeners truly understand the funds that we focused on this afternoon. So we will flash the questions and a window will pop out. All you need to do is to click on your answers, no? So the first question is, what is the primary goal of the Sun Life Starter Funds? Is it A, to preserve capital, or B, to maximize returns? Okay, so I'm seeing answers coming in. Okay, I think we can now show the, okay, this is the second question. So the second question is, how much is the minimum investment for the Sun Life Peso Starter Fund? A, is it 100, B, 500, C, 1,000, or D, 5,000 pesos? And for our last question, how much is the minimum investment for the Sun Life Dollar Starter Fund? A, is it $100, B, $500, C, $1,000, or D, $5,000? Okay, so as of now, we have 61% of our attendees answering the poll. Okay, so now I think you can now see the results of our poll. No? So for question number one, half of our listeners answered A, preserve capital, and actually 51% no, answered maximize returns. But actually, the correct answer for this question is A, to preserve capital. So again, um, the funds that we focus on this afternoon are very conservative funds, and as mentioned by John a while ago, we are not expecting too much fluctuations or volatility, no, on these funds. That's why the main or the primary goal of the starter funds is again to preserve our capital. But we also want to maximize our returns, as shown by John a while ago. The returns of these funds are competitive enough, no, or higher than the regular bank savings accounts. So again, the answer for your question number one is to preserve capital. And for number two, the correct answer is 100. So 79% of the participants got it right. So yes, 100 pesos. You only need 100 pesos to open an account on the Sun Life Peso Starter Fund. And for question number three, I think majority got the correct answer, and that is 500. The minimum investment amount for the dollar starter fund is $500. Okay. So now to summarize what John has shared with us this afternoon, again, the Sun Life Prosperity Peso Starter Fund, the main goal of this fund is to preserve capital. It is placed not to beat the traditional bank rates, and the time horizon for this fund is short term. For the dollar starter fund, it is technically it is classified as short-term fixed income fund, but essentially it is the USD version of the peso starter fund. So it is being managed very similarly to the peso starter fund. And again, the minimum initial investment for these funds is 100 pesos and $500. So, okay, now that we have more clarity on these funds, you may be considering starting your own mutual fund account with SlamC, or even adding to your existing account. No? Since we are living in these uncertain times where our family's health and safety are of utmost importance, we would like to encourage everyone to take advantage of our various digital platforms. So feel free to take a photo of the screen. So for new clients, we have the MF Online application. And for existing clients, you can take advantage of our online bills payment, online payment page, and our auto debit facility. So we will be showing a short video on how you may conveniently open an account online, no? And also our next events. And then after this, we will proceed to our Q&A. So okay, so let's share the video on how to open account online.
Want to start investing in the Sun Life Prosperity Funds? It takes only a few steps. Go to www.sunlifefunds.com to know the different types of mutual funds available. When you find the mutual fund that fits you best, click Buy Now. Accomplish the online application page. Upload a clear photo of a valid government ID with signature. Read the terms and conditions. Click Agree to accept. Review your order details. Select the mode of payment. That's it. Easy, right? A confirmation of your subscription will be sent via SMS or email. Congratulations! You're now officially a Sun Life Prosperity Funds investor.
Okay, so indeed, investing using MF Online app is as easy as 1, 2, 3. So all you need to have is a selfie and your investment. Okay, so to know more about mutual funds, we would like to invite you to our next events. No, so we have our Mutual Funds 101 webinar this coming October 12 at 2 o'clock to 3:30 p.m. So you can scan the QR code or copy the registration link to register. And we'd also like to invite you to the next installment of our Fund and Focus session. Our next topic will be the Sun Life Balanced Funds. So this will be on October 26th at 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. Please feel free to scan the QR code or copy the registration link to register. And also, we also have an ongoing client promo for select Sun Life funds. So again, you may scan on the QR code or copy the link below or on your screen to know the promo mechanics. So, okay, so let's now proceed to the last part of our webinar. So let me call on John again to help us answer some questions. I guess we also have a few questions in the chat pod, no? Okay, so to kickstart, John, I have a question here. The question goes: are the starter funds recommended for 2-year investment horizon?
Okay, that's a good question. I think we also have that question in the chat pod, no? So, how about for 2 years now, na investments? Personally, this although usually, well, in the company in Sun Life, we say that Sun Life funds, sorry, the starter funds are really great for 1 year investment horizons. Ako personally, up to 2 years, up to 2.5 years, I consider it, no, as an investor, sorry, as yeah, as an instrument, especially if I really know that I am going to spend it um within that time frame. I consider it. There are also other things that I consider, like for example, um kung yung interest rates, then I also look into that, kung worth it ba yung bonds, let's say, for that time frame. But parang to keep it simpler na rin lang for myself, I really, for me, the starter funds are really one of my favorite funds. May dalawang favorite na funds sa Sun Life. And the starter fund is one of my favorite, just because for the fact that it has a very short term, 7-day holding period. It's able to beat most time deposit accounts. Ako nga minsan, like parang ano, pag may talagang, usually ang mini-maintain ko lang sa bank account ko is our budget for the month and our yung maintaining balance niya. So maintaining balance is the monthly budget. Everything else, kahit hindi ko pa alam kung saan kailangan yung perang yun, or kung hindi ko pa alam kung ano yung gusto kong gawin sa perang yun, nilagay ko muna siya sa starter fund, because that's how confident I am that it'll be just there. It won't lose value. It's a very safe fund, and yeah, it won't really go down in value that much, if ever at all. Ganun. So for 2 years, if you are sure that you will need that money in 2 years, I think it's still a good fund to invest in. I mean, you could try a bond fund then, if you'd like, diba? Pero ako personally, between the bond fund, siguro 60% to 70% of the time, I would go for the money market fund.
Okay, so probably, John, you're also taking into consideration the um, getting the assurance, no, that you will have the money,
Yeah.
the full amount of that money when the time
Correct. Yeah.
comes that you will need that, no.
Mm-mm.
So as much as possible, if you're really intending or allocating that money for a specific goal, as much as
Mm-mm.
possible, you want to keep it as safe, no.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Also, probably, John, just a follow-up question on that. For someone who is starting to build his or her own portfolio, no, what would you recommend, or up to how much percentage of the total portfolio would you recommend to be placed in conservative funds like this starter funds?
Mhm. So we've shared this also earlier, no? So there's also a danger of being too liquid, or as we said, over liquid, no? Because if you go that route naman, you could be possibly missing out on, you could possibly missing out on um possible returns. So it's a balancing act actually. Ako, I also try to maintain liquidity in my own personal investment portfolio. So share ko lang, nung nag-start yung pandemic, yung March, 2020, the market kept going down. And ako, paunti-unti every week, I put in money, no? Tapos, malayo pa to dun sa pinaka-dip talaga. Naubusan na ako ng, kumbaga, bala, parang gano'n. Naubusan na ako ng liquidity. So, wala, nag-stop na ako dun. Kasi, yun lang yung nakaset aside ko for investment. So, there is, ako personally, hindi ako as liquid kasi I'd like to well, that's a personal decision of myself, no. Pero I think ideally for the average investor, they could maintain 20% liquidity. So let's say if you have 100,000 peso to invest, consider na 20,000 pesos you maintain. This is separate pa for your emergency fund, no? Pero 20,000 pesos you maintain as liquid assets lang, so that 'di ba, if there are really kasi you never know, we really never know if there are talagang more better opportunities that come along, then of course you would still have that money to be able to put in and 'di ba, invest. So yeah, 20% liquidity, I think that's a good target, or a good what do you call that, thumb rule of thumb. Yeah.
Okay, probably no. I myself probably also is guilty of having too much liquidity in our portfolio. Ganyan kasi ang mga Pilipino, di ba? They are really conservative, but again, no, there is something that we're missing out if we are too
Correct.
liquid, especially if that money is intended for future use. No, there is really a tendency that
Yeah.
we over liquidate. So it is very important to always check our portfolio and match our portfolio allocation depending on our goals. Um, I have here another question, John, and this is probably because we showed the bank rates, no, in our previous slides. And the question from our listener is this covered by insurance?
Okay. So bank deposits are covered by insurance. We call that the PDIC, no? So the Philippine Depository Inc. something Corporation Insurance. However, that's up to 500,000 pesos only, and then yeah, that's up to 500,000 pesos for each depositor, no. The investments, Sun Life the mutual funds are not covered by PDIC. However, what we can guarantee is we have good fund managers. We have professional fund managers who are very adept in their field. And if you would also look at the track record of Sun Life, no? So Sun Life as a company has been in the Philippines for 125 years. Sun Life Asset Management as a company has been established since the year 2000, and none of our mutual funds have gone under. No? So I think that's still a good parang consideration to have if it's insured or not. But I think it's also important to look at the company, the type of company that you are getting in relationship with, no, or you are partnering with for your money. And I could attest that Sun Life is a good company to really trust for your hard-earned money.
Okay, so thank you for that, John. No? So probably for the last question, I see a lot of attendees asking if the Peso Starter Fund is the same as the Money Market Fund or the Sun Life Prosperity Money Market Fund.
Okay, so we shared this earlier. Sorry, the Peso Starter Fund, we just renamed it. It was just renamed. I think maybe that's the reason why we are having this
Mhm.
questions right now, because it was renamed as early as recently as this month, no. But yes, it's essentially the same fund. It's the money market fund. It's still a money market fund. We just renamed it to Peso Starter. Actually, that's one of the efforts that we are doing, because I think the money market fund is something that is, to someone that isn't really looking into finance yet or mutual funds yet. That's a bit vague, diba? What's a money market fund? Why would I put my money there? That's why we renamed it Peso Starter Fund. Para medyo instructional na rin yung name ng fund. No?
Mhm.
If you don't know what to do, I mean, where to put your money yet, which fund to start yet, you start here, Peso Starter Fund. So it's just a rename, but it's, yes, it's the same, no. Um,
Okay, John?
we have a question here also, Angel,
Okay.
in the Q&A pod. I think I'd like to answer now. So, how much are the front and back end charges of the dollar starter or even the peso starter fund? Actually, for the Sun Life starter funds, there is no load, no. So that's just another great thing that about these funds. There are no loads attached to it. So no matter how much you put in, wala siyang load. There's only a 7-day holding period, wherein if you redeem within that 7 days, pwede ka na, my small fee ka lang na babayaran. I think siguro 1%. But even low,
0.25, John.
0.25%
Yes,
pala yun. Kasi
0.25%.
I am not very familiar with that, kasi I haven't really I haven't really
Yes.
experienced with redeeming within 7 days, no. But yeah, it's 0.25%. And also so that's a good thing about it, no. Unlike in time deposit, it already beats the rates of the time deposit historically, and also the holding period is not as long. 'Di ba? Usually with time deposits, baka at the shortest, that's 1 month, usually 1 year, diba? And then if you pre-terminate, may fee ka. So that's the best thing that I would think, a good offer that the starter funds can offer our investors. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that, John. And unfortunately, that is all the time that we have this afternoon. Thank you again for being with us this afternoon, John, and for enlightening us with the
Thank you, thank
Sun
you.
Life Starter Funds. So, um, to our listeners, thank you very much for sharing your time with us. We also love to hear from you. No, so after this, we will be sending a short evaluation, and we hope to get your answers. And we will also send the recording of this video. So that's it for this afternoon. Again, I am Angel Cruz of Sun Life Asset Management. Thank you and good afternoon.